When I first moved here, there was not a single solitary fence on the property. In fact, there really wasn't much. There was a house and a couple of outbuildings. Basically, the house and these two buildings, and that was it. But it didn't take long. In fact, only a few months that first summer. And I knew if I wanted to have a vegetable garden, which was a plan, I was going to have to get a fence built. So I did. So I hired somebody to come in here, and there was a bunch of trees in here, so I had him cut them all down and put up this 8-foot fence. Yes, Sarah, there's a dog. So they put up the 8-foot fence, and I started gardening in here. That was back in 2011. I had no animals except for a couple of barn cats that I had gotten in December. No goats, no dogs, nothing else. Chickens, nothing. But I had the garden, and so that summer, or as soon as it was built actually, the fence was built, I started gardening in here. Well, then that November, I had a goat show up. Just walked by the house, decided to name her Lawnmower. And that was November 2011. And about a month afterward, the weather people started yelling winter weather was coming. I think it was freezing rain, could be wrong, could have been, but whether it was freezing rain, sleet, snow, it was coming. We were going to have a hard freeze. And here I had one goat in this empty paddock. We had to do something quick. A friend came out to help me because I needed an instant shelter. So we took some cedar posts that were lying around the property, aimed them against this fence, put tarps along the fence, tarp along the cedar posts, some metal roofing we basically made a makeshift shelter for her, an instant makeshift shelter. It wasn't anything designed to be permanent. It was designed to last a few months through winter. That's all I cared about. And as soon as the weather improved, my friend started helping me with a goat fence and then a goat shelter. So eventually we didn't need that anymore, and it got taken down. But then I forget, a couple years later, still I didn't have this rock raised bed or anything in here. But I had this shelter built, that shelter built, this paddock, and this garden, but nothing else. Didn't have the chicken coop. Well, I may or may not have had the chicken coop. I don't remember the timeline. The point I'm trying to make is I really had no place to separate goats from. By now, a few years had passed, I had a whole bunch of goats, and I had a whole bunch of kids, and I had both bucklings and doelings. And I don't remember why I wanted to keep these bucklings. Maybe it was just to get fatter, bigger before I sold them. I don't remember. But I needed to separate the boys from the girls. And I think I had 3 boys that needed to be separated. Bucklings can get a doe pregnant when they're only 8 weeks old. Definitely by the time they're 3 months old. You have got to separate them. And so what I decided to do was to move the boys in here and keep all the girls over there. But they were going to need a shelter. So what we did was, I believe by then I had been doing straw bale gardening. So I knew where to get straw bales. It's a drive, but I can get it. We got a load of straw bales, and we basically built a shelter, a little straw bale shelter. Put plywood on top, some straw bales on top of that to hold the plywood on top of the shelter, and they ate their shelter. but honestly, I could give them enough food that straw wasn't as tasty as the other stuff I was giving them. But we used this corner, made a straw bale shelter for them, and it was instant housing. I mean, it only took a couple hours, excluding the drive, to set it up, and then they had a decent place to go to when it was snowing or super windy and cold and they just needed some shelter. Last summer I hatched out a whole boatload of baby ducks and geese. But I had the ducks in here to keep them safe from predators and to keep them from going next door where they had a run-in with predators. And I couldn't do anything about it because they were next door on property I can't access. And so it became very evident to me back in, definitely by August, that I had to find a new place for these babies to spend the winter. I think it was either 9 ducks and 11 geese or 11 ducks and 9 geese. I can't remember anymore. But way too many for this one area. And so, after thinking about it for a while, I came up with a plan. One problem I faced was these guys tend to be bullies. And even the chickens will tend to bully the ducks. My ducks are very passive for some reason. And so, it was a hard decision, but I finally decided that in this part of the chicken yard, I was going to have to put the ducks. My first plan was to close the fence up and house them separately. But then, unfortunately, I started losing ducks, and we think it was a bobcat, not sure. First, I thought it was Ariel, a bird, hawk or something. So I had covered the entire area with string like this twine, but it never stopped. So now it's just all open and they're all together. Anyway, if I moved them here, they were going to need shelter. But I didn't want to build anything that was going to be permanent. So I built this. That is dry stacked. There's no mortar. There is nothing except gravity keeping those walls together that's holding up the metal roofing. I could have this dismantled in an hour. So if anytime I want to kick out the animals, because like the past few summers, I have closed up the gate over here. I closed up the fence and actually tried growing squashes, pumpkins, watermelon, those kind of vegetables that take up a huge amount of room. Well, I've resigned myself that I'm probably not going to do that this spring or this summer because these guys will eat it all, and so will the chickens. But here is a temporary shelter. It took me a while to build it, but it's done, and it's going to last for years. I can dismantle it in a minute if I want to, or I can leave it up for however long. I mean, I've had to, after a severe storm, I did have to move the metal roofing a little bit, put some rocks back up there. What took a couple minutes, not a big deal. So, that's 3 emergency temporary shelters I have built over the years. There's been others. What do you have on your property? If you needed to separate an animal tomorrow, put them somewhere else, what do you have that you could use to, in a day or in a week, build a temporary shelter? I have built long-term shelters using pallets. Most of the time you can get those for free. But what if you needed to provide somebody shelter today? What do you have around your property that you could use to create a shelter? Hope that gives you some ideas on what you could do in an emergency. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.